Today, let's talk about a photo editing trick that will change your life. Yes, really. It changed mine as soon as I figured out how to do this, that I've pretty much started using on all my photos. And I love the way it starts to come out because I can control the light. I shape the light. So grab your favorite beverage. I'm on my 6th cup of coffee. Yeah, that just happened. First, let's fire up Lightroom and load that photo in. We have the picture. Here it is right here. And it's just kind of bland looking. It's kind of meh. It's okay. I did a little bit of a long exposure on this one because that's what I was kind of feeling when I got to this place. It was pretty cool. It is an HDR merge, so I took multiple exposures, 3 of them to be exact. I got my highlights, I got my midtones, and I got my shadows. And I blended them all together inside of Lightroom. And this is the image that came out. The first thing that I do is I go into my lens corrections and I make sure that I have both of these things checked because I'm making sure that it accounted for the lens that I was using. Now I'm going to go into the basics. And what I like to do here is bring up the shadows, and I'll do that by holding the option button on my Mac. And what this will do is give me a mask, and you can kind of see how this works. And it just kind of go till I get rid of most of that blown out shadows there. And I bring that right up, and I do the same for the highlights. I'll bring that down. You can kind of see in the upper corner up here that it's a little blown out, but that's okay. It's not too bad. So I'll just open those up. And this is okay as well. I'll play with my whites. Get it going just a hair, especially if you can see over here on this waterfall. Bring those up a little bit. And I do the same on the blacks. And this is okay. I do like to be a little underexposed there. And make sure that your white balance is also. And I just usually go through this drop down and I kind of see what works, what doesn't work. And that definitely doesn't work. But for this one, I'm going to go with that shot because I feel like I got the white balance. Now I'm going to adjust the exposure just a little bit because what you're trying to do during this process is really flatten out that image. You want to get it as basic as possible. Right about there ought to do it. Then we're going to go into detail and make sure that sharpening is turned all the way down because we're going to do that in Photoshop as more of a controlled sharpening versus just applying sharpen to the entire image. So once we're done with all these adjustments, let's go ahead and right click on the image, go to edit in and open as smart object in Photoshop. Go ahead, click open. First thing you want to do is duplicate that image, do Command J, rename that to your main. Now you have your main image, and the reason for that smart object is because you want to edit non-destructively. So that means when you apply adjustments, when you do different effects to that layer, you can play with those effects later. Because if you didn't have it as a smart object and you did some changes using adjustments or something along those lines, or even curves for that matter, you would have to press your history button and go all the way back and figure out when you did that. Whereas if inside the smart object, you can actually play with the adjustments on the fly when you want. Let's go ahead and duplicate that image again. And we're going to name this one Filter Raw. This is where we're going to apply our camera raw filter. And we're going to few more adjustments in here. Let's go ahead and open up these shadows a little bit more because I'm kind of paying attention to what's in here. Just a little bit. Get these whites popping a little bit. You don't want the highlights going too crazy on you. Bring them down just a hair. And I can see right in here. It's looking pretty good. Just making sure I can see everything inside the photo. And that's looking pretty good, at least for this image. Now, in your image, it's going to be a little bit different, but go ahead, again, you're looking for that flatness to your image. You're not trying to put in contrast or anything like that in there just yet. Hit OK, and that applies that filter. And here's what I said about that smart object. You can double click, and if you want to, you can go back and make more adjustments. Now inside of this filter raw, what we're gonna do is you can press this little button right here. We're gonna do a layer mask. Now hold down the option button or your alt button, click on it, and what that does is it applies that black layer mask. We're gonna hit the B button for our brush and making sure that this is white. You don't want it set to black, otherwise it won't do anything. You're gonna set it to white. And what that will do is you're gonna selectively brush over where you want the raw filter that you just created, and it's gonna apply it to the layer below. So now you can paint on, making sure your opacity is set to 100. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to see much of anything right at this point. But you can paint on those adjustments. And we're just going to paint over, looking at where that light was coming from. You're going to be painting over a lot of this. Pay attention to your light source. I know that sun's kind of coming through here, and I'm going to know that's going to be reflecting off of this surface, and it's going to be going to this surface. So I'm really paying attention to that. Some light bouncing here, and this is really affecting anywhere that you're going to be painting. Now you can kind of see it before and after. Before, after. Keep doing a few more of those adjustments on your image. Before, after. Before, after. Now when you're painting into the shadow part of it, you kind of want to reduce your opacity to probably around 20% or so. And you just want to get a little bit of that detail in there. You're going to brighten up those shadows just so you can see some detail. But again, it's just dependent on your image. Really just paint that in there. You're kind of seeing these cracks and stuff. So now with your filter raw, this layer mask adjustment selected, go ahead and come down to this curves adjustment. Select curves, and you can see this slope here. And what I like to do is grab the midpoint, drag it down just a little bit, and then kick up the shadows just a hair. There we go. And select your gradient tool. And we're going to select radial gradients. Go ahead and just put that there. Now what this does is it creates your own sort of vignette inside your image. So where you don't want the vignette, you hit that B button, you make sure the black is selected, and that will apply it show the underneath layer. You can see this lightening up really nicely there. Let's adjust that flow a little bit. Really play with that. Again, take your time with this. So I can see it before and after. Before and after. Before, after. Again, paying attention to where that light's coming from. Where is that light bouncing? Okay, so then after that, what you want to do is click here. You want to go to create a new layer. And then you're going to set that blending mode to overlay. And then we're going to create a new clipping mask right here. and then go up to image, apply image, and we're going to click OK. And what that does is it's going to reveal those highlights as white, and then everything else is going to be black for the dark. So go ahead and hold down your Option key and click there, and you can see how it turned everything to more of a black and white image. Now, press Command M, and this will bring up your curves adjustment. And this is where we're going to play with those highlights. We're going to drop these shadows a little bit. Going to create that S curve right here. And I know this looks a little weird right now, but bear with me. There, that looks a little better. Go ahead and grab that. There we go. There. Now, click on that layer again. Now, all that goes away. So now select the B button for your brush. Make sure white is selected. And make sure your opacity is somewhere around 15 to 20% or so, because you don't want to apply that curve adjustment that we just did, because what that's doing is applying everything that we did with the curve inside that brush. So if you went on really strong, it would really brighten it up. So you want to control the opacity and the flow here. So maybe around 80 or 90% should be okay. And watch this. It's going to go on ever so slightly, but we're brightening up everything that we want to be bright. Watch. So you have before and after. Before and after. So now go ahead and apply that to all your rocks and anywhere that you want those whites and those highlights to come alive. And keeping in mind, it's only affecting the highlights. That's what's so cool about this brush. Okay, here's a before, and here's an after. Before, and then an after. Again, play with that till you like where it's at. Okay, so now what we're gonna do is this Orton effect, and that's what really gives that blurry, dreamy, soft look, and we're gonna do that to the highlights. So go ahead, once you flatten that image, we're gonna hit Command J, because we're gonna duplicate it. Label that the Orton effect. Okay. And then we're gonna go down here to the curves adjustment and add curves to it. Go ahead and bring up those highlights again. Drop those shadows down. Again, creating that nice little S curve there. And what you really want is this to look really contrasty and really give it that oomph to it. Because again, we're going to be brushing this effect in. That looks really good there. And then what you want to do is you want to clip that to the lower layer. So with your curves adjustment layer selected, go ahead and click this button right here. There we go. Then the next thing that you want to do is select that Orton effect layer and bring this opacity down to right around 20% or so. 15 to 20% I find is right around the sweet spot depending on the image. You don't want to overdo it, otherwise everything's just glowing. And you don't want to underdo it, otherwise you won't really notice the effect. So again, 10 to 15% can work, again, depending on the image. And for this image, I'm probably going to go right around 16% or so. So once you've got that opacity down to where you want it, go ahead and let's create that clipping mask by holding Option and click it. It's going to create that layer mask, or that's Alt and click it. Then we're going to brush it on. So this is where that effect is going to go in, and again, bring that opacity down to maybe 16 to 20%, somewhere in there, because you don't want to overdo this. And just brush that onto your highlights. Anywhere where you want that nice glowing effect, Again, we're just brushing it on. Making sure we hit everything you're seeing in those highlights that you want a glow. So here's the before, and here's the after. And then before, after. Now it's subtle, but once you make all your other adjustments after this, they really start to come through. Again, hitting everything that you see that you would want to have some sort of glow effect to it. Before and after. Before and then after. And the next thing we're going to do is you're going to flatten this part of the image again. Shift, Option, Command, E. That creates a whole new layer, so that's flattened. And we're going to duplicate that. And this is going to be the sharpening layer. So we're going to go up to Filter, go to Other, go to High Pass. Now this makes that image look kind of weird, and it's got that weird black and gray, and then some of it looks interesting and some of it doesn't. But what I like to do is get that radius around 120 pixels or 120 pixels or so. And again, you can play with this adjustment, but I find that right around 120, 125, somewhere in there, it works. Then you're going to click OK. And once you have that applied, you're going to select that layer and go to Overlay. Then we're going to create another clipping mask. Go ahead and hold your Option or your Alt. Click on it. It's that black clipping mask, and that's why it's so powerful with these clipping masks, because you decide where you want this effect applied. I have that white selected, and we're going to paint on the sharpening. Again, up this a little bit to the opacity that you want. Make sure your flow is all the way up, and just paint that on. And you'll see in those highlights and in those blacks, that detail just come alive. This is my favorite part. Besides the Orton effect, everything's my favorite part. It's just all so good. Again, I'm applying it where I want it, where I want to see some detail. These rocks. This bridge. Again, just in those areas where you want it to go. And your image is going to be different, but again, you can really see this come alive. You can see the befores and the after. See how everything just starts to pop? Really apply it where you want it. Don't apply it to the whole image. Apply it in those sections that you want to lead your viewer into the image. And that's looking pretty good. Again, the before, and then the after. Before, and then the after. Clean up some more little areas that you would want. And then once you're done with the image, and you're all set, go ahead and click Save. And that'll save everything that you just did over to Lightroom. Let's go ahead and check out Lightroom now. And you see everything has been applied. Now, all that's left is basically, if you want to do your presets, you can select a preset and apply it. And you can make some more basic adjustments if you want. If you want to play with some more of that vignette, you want to play more with the colors, you can do that from here. And all your masks are still applied. So I'm thinking we're going to go with this Moody Forest, and that's pretty strong. But let's bring that down a little bit, maybe around, oh, I'd say about 50 or 60 there. And there you go. We can adjust these shadows a little bit now if we want. We can darken them up. We can brighten them. I'm thinking that's looking pretty good. And there it is. All finished. So let me know in the comments, did you like this? Did you like this kind of editing style? Play with it a little bit. Maybe you'll come up with a better way of doing that. Like and subscribe, and I will see you on the next video.